Hi, my name is Abigail Oliva. I'm going to be explaining a little bit how the Electoral College overall works for our system. So the Electoral College is a system in which the votes are counted by state rather than individual votes. This way it is determined by population. The way we figure out how many electoral votes each state has is that we add up the number of senators and the number of representatives each state has, and that is the number of Electoral College votes that each state has. There is a total of 540 votes. That means the first candidate that passes the 270 mark ends up being the next president of the United States. Some people do not like this system because swing states end up determining the outcome of the election, and some other people do because of the lack of population or representatives that their state has. So document B overall explains how, or shows some info on how the Electoral College ends up determining the election. So, Reagan in 1980 won 91% of the Electoral College votes, despite only winning 50.70% of the popular vote. This also happened when Clinton in 1992, when he won 69% of the Electoral College, despite only winning 43% of the popular vote. Looking at both results, the Electoral College votes was way higher than their popular vote. This is because they ended up winning more states, or the more heavily popular states, or more the swing states. For example, some swing states are Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and so forth. The swing states end up changing over time because there's party switches within history. One example when the popular vote did not matter was in 2016 when Clinton won the popular vote. However, Trump ended up winning the Electoral College because he won most of the swing states. He ended up winning Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida. So he won all those swing states, which made Clinton lose and Trump win. The Electoral College also makes it impossible for third-party candidates to not win at all. It is impossible because most of the population would rather vote Democratic or Republican to make sure that their candidate win. For example, in this recent election, a lot of Gen Z, or the population of Gen Z, did not want Biden, but they preferred Bernie. However, they did not vote for a third-party option because they knew that Biden had to be elected or had to be chosen to go against Trump. That is why most of them voted Biden to make sure that Biden ends up winning and did not vote for another third-party candidate. This is why some people prefer to get rid of the Electoral College because they feel like the candidate who wins more votes should end up being the president of the United States and not having it be determined by swing states that change from year to year. Also, more people want to give equal opportunity to other parties that they support, for example, the Libertarian Party, Independent, Green Party, because some people prefer their beliefs over the Democratic or Republican. However, they vote for the candidate they prefer best because they know those third-party candidates have no chance against this system.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I looked over document A.
Looking at the outcome of the presidential election interactive map for this year, we see that the electoral vote again dominates the whole election, considering the results on who becomes the next president seems to solely depend on those votes. The popular votes feel less and less impactful every time a new president is being voted. When a president wins by the electoral votes and not by the popular votes, people really feel like their votes doesn't even matter, considering that they won by the electoral votes and not by the common people's vote. From our history, we know that most presidents won by popular vote and the electoral college votes, but that doesn't mean presidents haven't won by electoral votes only. Some example of past presidents who did not receive the popular vote yet still won presidency because of the electoral votes includes Benjamin Harrison, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump. Now let's look into Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Harrison was the president from 1889 to 1893. His federal spending was out of control, especially the pensions given out to Civil War veterans. These pensions were so ambivalent and lacked any restrictions that 14 to 15-year-old girls would marry 70-year-old veterans in order to collect the pensions when their cradle-robbing hubbies kicked the bucket. Now, Harrison also supported future President William McKinley's tariff, which crippled foreign trade and brought massive inflation. Now, what does this show us? This shows us that the Electoral College doesn't always make the best decision when it comes to choosing a president. And this matters because it means that our government is still very flawed in terms of choosing a president, and that the Electoral College should really be abolished altogether so history doesn't repeat itself.
Why should the Electoral College be abolished? Document D. Document D states, the Electoral College violates political equality. This means that it is not a well-balanced way to establish political decisions. In other words, it is not a neutral counting device. This can also mean that the overall results are not accurate at the end of choosing the presidential-elect. There is definitely an uneven distribution of power throughout the states because some are more impactful than others, as the document D claims. It favors some citizens over others, depending solely upon the state in which voters cast their votes for president, as said in document D. The chart provided also demonstrates the wide range of population in the states. However, the electoral votes are not evenly distributed according to the numbers. To conclude this section, this document provides us with insightful statements as to why the Electoral College system is not an accurate representation of the people's vote, and it also provides a chart to visualize the uneven balance throughout the states, therefore supporting the claim that the Electoral College should be abolished.
Someone from the New York Times website describes the Electoral College like this: American democracy isn't just quirky, it's also unfair. 5 times in our history, presidential candidates who have won more votes than their opponent have still lost an election. Why? Our 230-year-old Jerry built system for picking the president, known as the Electoral College, saying it is not an effective way of choosing our president. The main problem with the Electoral College today is not as both supporters and detractors believe. With this appropriate power it gives smaller states, those states do get a boost from the 2 Senate-based electoral votes, but that benefit pales in comparison to the real culprit: statewide winner-take-all laws. Under these laws, which states adopted to gain political advantage in the nation's early years. To conclude all this, Electoral College is a system is allowing presidents who shouldn't have won to win because of this ineffective system and should be removed and changed.
My name is Cassandra, and I will be talking about the Electoral College and why we want to abolish it. On document E, it states that the U.S. has historically had 2-party systems, which means that there are only 2 major political parties. These are the parties that contend for and always win the political office, and the winner takes all electoral votes. It would encourage single issues, dialogues, and eccentric millionaires to jump into presidential contests. The multiplication of a splinter parties would make it hard for major parties candidates to win popular votes majorities. This shows that by using electoral votes, the winner would take the electoral votes to speed the disintegration of the weakened 2-party systems, which would not happen if you count.
Hello, my name is Lisbeth Marino, and my part is about document. Based on document F, we should abolish the Electoral College. It states that a president is chosen based on electoral votes, and if there ever was a chance that the votes were tied, then the election would get thrown to the House of Representatives. The Senate would then make the vice president the new president. It also states that because each state has only 1 vote, the single representative from Wyoming representing 500,000 voters would have as much say as 55 representatives from California who represent 35 million voters. This statement specifically shows that it is not fair that Wyoming's population has 1 person speaking for them. An example is California, who has 55 people speaking for them. It should be equal and count everyone's vote, not what the representatives choose to vote. Based on the Electoral College, if it were a tie, then they would have the Senate choose the president. That wouldn't have to happen if all the votes were counted from everyone who voted.
In document G, it shows the candidates who have ran for presidency from 1824 through the 2000s,
In 1824, John Quincy Adams won by 84 electoral votes. In 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes won by 185 electoral votes. 1888, Harrison won by 233 electoral votes, and George W. Bush won 271 electoral votes. The reason why people don't like the Electoral College is because it creates the possibility for the loser of the popular vote to win the electoral vote. This is more than a theoretical possibility. It has happened at least 4 times out of the 56 presidential elections, or more than 7% of the time, which is not such a small percentage, and it created a hideous mess every time. The most recent occurrence was 2000.
Hello. So I'll be presenting the counter-arguments we found to our group's standpoint. Such counter-arguments were taken from a Britannica Procon article which will be featured in the credits at the end. A counter-argument we found is that the Founding Fathers thought that citizens wouldn't be smart enough to make an informed decision. This was directed towards the early Americans living at the time, since reliable information was limited and many were illiterate who couldn't make an educated decision. But is that advice still reliable 244 years later? Well, no, because today we have millions of knowledge resources that can be found within seconds, for whatever subject you're interested in. However, having this much availability, we have to be informed with reliable sources so votes can be educated. Another found counter argument is that the president must serve all areas of the country. Rural voters fear that the population vote will concentrate in the urban areas, leaving their voice out in the election. Groups living in such areas like the Iowa farmers or even the Ohio factory workers would feel ignored. But our group's response would be that urban voters would have a disadvantage, because the population gap, combined with the electoral votes each state has, would make the rural people's votes more valuable. How so? If you do the math by population, a rural voter would be equal to 4 urban voters. So you would see why there's a disadvantage right there. So this concludes our group's counter arguments. Thanks.